Stronger than before.
Today we wanted to talk a little bit more about the issue of Fantastic Four. There's been a couple of developments. Those two developments are, one, Michael B. Jordan having a response to folks who don't like his casting as Johnny Storm in Fantastic Four, and also probably more at length interesting would be Josh Trank has resurfaced on Twitter to apparently have a couple shots at folks who he's not happy with.
Yeah, it's been complete radio silence from him for months now, after the media has been in with his being fired from Star Wars and everything.
He's had such terrible media coverage, he should hide, probably.
Yeah, I think saying nothing is probably his best strategy when all the evidence is stacked against him. When like the rumors just keep on coming and coming and coming, and they just can't debunk them. Basically, where there's smoke, there's fire. And you will remember in the last conversation we had about this, what we said was that the rumor was that he had been kicked out of the editing bay and the movie has essentially been refilmed. They refilmed half the movie with Matthew Vaughn as the uncredited ghost director. They would never come out publicly and say that this is now a Matthew Vaughn production, because that's against DGA rules and it's a horrible thing to market, because to have a movie by committee is one thing, but to sell it is another. They haven't really said anything of the sort.
There's plenty of precedent for it, though. For example, with the first Wolverine movie, the first standalone Wolverine movie was said to have largely been reshot by a secondary director. I believe it was Richard Donner.
Exactly, it was Richard Donner who did that one. You have plenty precedent for it. This has happened many times over the course of history, including X-Men First Class.
A lot of Fox productions actually impacted by this. I think Hitman was another one.
Yeah, the list is as long as it is sad, and Fantastic Four is now the most recent entry. And you have had the speculation going now, and like the whispers, and people who are in the know have been talking about it for weeks already, but it hasn't really broken out in the mainstream media and in the usual suspects in the blogging communities until the last few days ago, when both comicbookmovie.com as well as Superhero News, both independently of each other, claimed that their sources said that essentially what we already knew, that Matthew Vaughn is directing the Fantastic Four reshoots. And this is what caused Josh Trank to come out of the woodwork. And he's then had a series of tweets today. Would you like to read them?
Yeah, maybe we can respond one by one to them.
Two tweets are in response to these articles by Superhero News and comicbookmovie.com, where basically Trank just says that no, it's all bullshit. He is the one and only director of the Fantastic Four 2015.
The specific tweets that are kind of tied together. First he says, next time you read an article, whether it's Hollywood Reporter or Superhero News, if they aren't naming sources, it's probably bullshit. He then follows up by saying, where there's bullshit, there's flies. Which actually, that second post is pretty agreeable. But I think the first one is where there's disagreeability. Where are the flies and where is the bullshit?
Exactly, because what he means is that unless it comes from Fox, the ones who have absolutely no interest in telling the full story, we shouldn't trust it. So basically he says, trust the spin machine, trust our own marketing.
That's a good point.
And we have from so many other sources that you just can't ignore all the problems, from him wrecking this house. Since later it has turned out that it was his dogs that did $100,000 worth of damage, not himself. Do you believe that?
It doesn't even really matter in a way. I mean, I think whether it was him or whether it was the dog, and I'm honestly not drawing conclusions, because a human being is capable of doing $100,000 worth of damage on their own, especially if they're on drugs, but that's neither here nor there. Either way, he would be responsible.
Yeah, that's kind of my point as well. Can a dog do damage? Yeah, certainly, but not $100,000 worth of damage. You're gonna need a drugged up, raging director or a rock star to create that kind of damage.
And we should probably be checking into seeing if he had like Russell Crowe over or something, because I don't know, just Josh Trank just really isn't a big enough guy to be like punching holes in walls and tearing things down. I think he'd really need, just like a larger man.
Well, apparently he wasn't alone. There are rumors and reports that at least one of the people involved in the making of the Fantastic Four had to go to rehab after the production. And the implication is because he was so drugged up with Trank that he had some problems before, and then he was doing okay, and then he met with Trank during this production, and then any progress he had since his last bout with drugs went down the drain.
The rumors just keep getting better and better.
Yeah, they just keep getting better and better.
He just sounds like such a good guy.
Like, why watch soap opera when you have this? Anyway, you still have the people who suffer from a really bad case of what we can dub the Foxholm syndrome, who actually believe him or try to convince themselves and others that we should believe him and that everything is hunky-dory. Yeah, this one is one for the history books, I think. He's just issued a standard denial. And denials in Hollywood, they don't really mean all that much. Like, just look at the casting decisions that we've had lately.
Plus, I think you can buy a pack of a dozen of them very cheaply.
Yeah, exactly. That too. But like some recent examples are Benedict Cumberbatch, who denied he was part of Doctor Strange right up until the day he was cast. Then it was all true. But he denied just like the day or 2 days before. And the same with Scott Lang with Ant-Man. He also denied there being any kind of talks between him and Marvel, as little as a single-digit amount of days before actually being cast. So denials come cheap in Hollywood.
2 posts were kind of a bundle. So I believe he's referring to John Byrne in both. So the first is, people using racist logic to argue that they aren't racist will never cease to amaze me. And of course the second tweet is, John Byrne has officially turned into Stacy Keach in American History X.
Yeah, and I think that's is that defamation?
Well, maybe. I don't know. Saying it's official is kind of humorous. It's basically baby talk. It's not particularly impressive. It probably doesn't rise to the level of slander because it would take somebody believing it in order for it to be effective slander.
And the thing is, we already know why he's making these claims. Like, what is the horrible crime that John Byrne did to unleash this response in Trank? Well, very simple. He said, and it was quite a long time ago as well, where he essentially said that instead of turning established characters who were Caucasian into black characters in the name of political correctness, it would be better to create brand new characters today in the modern world who are black or other ethnicities to begin with. And this apparently does not sit very well with Trank.
Yeah, despite being a fairly popular opinion in all circles. That's not to say that this isn't a heavily divisive issue where there's room for lots of opinions, but to say that this is like the grand master racist comment, that borders on humorous.
It's quite a joke, actually.
Real racism is very visible sometimes when you look for it. People outright denying opportunities or using slanderous terms. There was kind of a racist incident out here in Oregon the other day. Somebody walked into a Mexican restaurant angry that they had onions on their food and actually referred to somebody by a Mexican racial slur. I mean, there is real racism. It's just, this is not it. John Byrne is not the grand master of the KKK.
Now, the problem with Josh Trank here is that he just dilutes the term racism, reducing it to every single time there is a disagreement where one person is Caucasian and the other is any other ethnicity, it's automatically racism, and that's not necessarily the case. He's not doing anyone any favors by making comments like these. And also, his own credibility is basically just down the gutter right now. What is really interesting in terms of statements is that when Trank was fired from Star Wars, there was no expressions of sympathy or understanding or best of luck wishes from any of the cast members he was working with. It was total silence. Mara said nothing. Jordan said nothing. No one said anything. Complete and utter silence. You would have expected at least some of them to say, hey, good for you, good luck. Good luck, whatever you're doing next, you're going to nail. Nothing. The only one who said anything was the writer of Chronicle, who just tweeted one word, karma.
Oh.
Burn.
Even if there were these expressions of sympathy, they would have had to have been private, which means even if there is somebody who could sympathize with him, they're certainly not going to do it and burn their career along with his.
No, exactly. I think that's basically just everyone washing their hands, and it just confirms the rumors all the more that no one wants to be seen sympathizing with him. Shitstorm is coming his way, and no one wants to be caught in the crossfire.
The crossfire of shit. So adding to this, Michael B. Jordan actually penned an article for Entertainment Weekly in which he tackled the race issue. For those who have not heard this, so Michael B. Jordan is playing a character who traditionally has been white. That in itself is not terribly controversial. I mean, we've seen that happen many times, too numerous to mention, and I think society is probably dealing with it better now than they have in a long time. But he wanted to grab onto this issue for himself because supposedly it all started with him looking at the internet, and of course he points out this unwritten rule, which is you're not supposed to look at the internet when you're playing a superhero, because of course everybody is going to be taking issue right away, which is true, and I certainly have a certain amount of sympathy for him. But where it goes on to become a little bit more convoluted is that he says people are accusing this of being political correctness because of Obama. Okay, which I don't, even if we were accusing it of being political correctness, I don't know why it would necessarily have to be tied to Obama. And of course the other accusations, it's not true to the comic. Also, the other accusation, they've destroyed it. I suppose we're looking at the varying levels of criticism. They've destroyed it being the most severe. He tries to point out a couple of things in defense of the movie and his casting, such as, I think one linchpin of this article is that Stan Lee sent Josh Trank a email supposedly saying that it was okay to make Johnny Storm black. So yeah, basically he refers to people who he says are making the political correctness accusations of being trolls. That's the long story short.
In other words, he kind of pulls the race card. To begin with, there has been some legitimate complaints, or not legitimate, but there have been some complaints which are racist in nature. And that, of
truly
course,
racist comments.
That is, of course, disgraceful, and he has every reason to react to that. However, that being said, there are many, many, many other reasons to complain about this movie, and they have nothing to do with racism, but many have to do with his casting. One of the things that are frequently brought up as an argument against his casting, and that has nothing to do with his ethnicity, is nepotism. Johnny Storm was the one character there were no test screenings for, there was no cast sessions, no nothing. He was director Josh Trank's only choice for the role. He was only cast because Trank wanted to cast his best buddy.
So this is just a case of a director hiring his friend.
Exactly, regardless of how he would fit with anyone else or how the chemistry would be. Or there were no such considerations like, okay, this is my Johnny Storm, and that was it.
My question is, why did they cast him as Johnny Storm? I mean, so you've got the Fantastic Four, you've got the two siblings, Johnny and Sue Storm, and then you've got Reed Richards, who is Sue Storm's love interest and usually her husband, and also Ben Grimm, who is, I guess, just kind of a colleague of theirs. Of all the characters you could have made black, why did they choose the one place where it was weird? I mean, it's really not about racism, because I think you could have more intelligently made every single member of the Fantastic Four black. It's only controversial because the studio is trying to defend it as if people are attacking it from a race perspective, when it's really more about, well, why are we saying these two siblings are different races? Now you have to change their whole origin story so that one of them's adopted. And so if they had cast Michael B. Jordan as Reed Richards, that would have made so much more sense. And I think it would have been a role he would have been okay with also, because we're still talking about a young Reed Richards in this movie either way.
Absolutely. It would have been so much better if they had made the leader of the group black. That would be a far more powerful statement anyway.
And they'd be including an interracial relationship too if they did
exactly, without doing anything with the family dynamics of the Storm family. Now he's still basically just the second runner.
Not classically anyway. I almost wonder if this movie is going to push it in that direction though. I mean, I've heard some comments that make it sound like Johnny Storm's character in this movie isn't particularly true to the comics anyway. Like he's kind of somebody who is trying to push the other team members to make a more responsible decision with their lives, which is like, really? Johnny Storm is telling people how to be responsible?
Which other character in the movie is true to the comics? So that just kind of fits with everything else. Like the comics are just out the window. It's nothing they care about at all. However, you did touch upon one really important point in there, and that is what I think is the most frustrating with Jordan's response, and I think many others will see it the same way and probably lose a great deal of respect for him. So I think this is going to backfire, because as we said initially, there are many reasons to be negative about this movie. Essentially, it's a rights grab. It has a deeply troubled production. It is made really without Marvel's input or blessing, as evidenced by Marvel essentially canceling the Fantastic Four in response.
Maybe that's not the case. I mean, they supposedly are wrapping it up as part of their entire universe reboot, and I think it may even still be going on right now. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, well, we don't know for sure, but still it's intriguing that they choose that title to cancel at the same time as this movie is coming out. Like when you have a movie coming out, it's a really weird time to cancel the comic. Even if they don't stand to earn anything on the movie directly, they could still hope to earn something by way of trade paperback sales or renumbering the title, bring in some new viewers or readers who are curious about the movie. Instead, they cancel it. So, of course, it might be because it wasn't selling anything, but it's funny timing. Point being, there are many reasons to be negative about the movie. And as we have discussed in our previous videos, and fans are discussing all over the internet, the ethnicity of Johnny Storm is just like one tiny drop in the bucket of many other things wrong. And yet this is the one thing that Jordan focuses on, and even manages to bring in Obama. And of course, like, he would have a point if he was the only one. If he was the only actor portraying a white character, then he would have a point, but that is not the case. I have one great example. You might have heard about this little B movie called Suicide Squad. You know, the one starring Will Smith?
Well, if David Ayer's directing it, it is a B movie, but go on.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, the character that Will Smith is playing is also ethnically white in the comics, and here he is made black for the movie. Where's the outrage? And but basically it's the same thing that's happening there. It's race bending, but no one cares. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's
right.
Like,
there has been literally no outrage.
Exactly. And when Nick Fury was turned into a black man in the guise of Samuel L. Jackson, you had some people who were dissenting, like the usual minority, but a very loud minority, but they were drowned out. And then you also have Heimdall in the Thor movies. Again, you have some loud minority complaining, but overall, there's no outrage. And when Vondi Curtis Hall was announced as Ben Urich, again, there was no outrage. People were completely fine with it. With Fantastic Four, there is outrage. But Michael B. Jordan is only a small part of it. And when both he and Fox, by extension, try to basically silence all criticism by saying, oh, it's all racism, instead of denying the very real issues that people have problem with, that comes across as a bit condescending.
Yeah, and that was what really bothered me about the article overall is when you tell audiences they have to feel a certain way. I mean, that reeks of spin machine. I mean, a really good approach, if I was writing this article, I would have tried to kind of talk to those people with a different perspective. For example, can you imagine how much criticism would have been canceled out just by complimenting people on their passion for the character? But they've made it seem like he hates the original character, and that's why we're all racist, is because we don't like their new vision for the character. When really, if the only change for the character was that he was black, but otherwise he matched up to our expectations, I don't think there would be any outrage. And if he would kind of reach out to these people and say, that's exactly what we're gunning for, no controversy, instant lack of controversy.
I think that they're deliberately trying to focus on the racist angle, because then they can dismiss the criticism as racism, all of it, not just the little bit which is actual racism, but everything that has to do with the movie being a rights grab and Trank going nuts on set, the characters being very little to nothing like their comic book counterparts. All of those things that can kind of gloss over and focus on, oh, racism, you're all horrible racists. Be ashamed of yourself. See the movie. But to sum it up, I don't think this is going to turn anything around. This is just like one more example of everything they say in public is going to just dig them deeper into the hole.
It was always going to be controversial as soon as they decided to kind of push aside the comics. It's been pretty clear that each new edit of the trailer has included more and more material that you would expect to see in the comic. This movie in general is just going to have a really hard time convincing fans they're serious. This is just one more step on this movie's wild ride towards infamy.
That being said, though, the movie itself can still turn out to be pretty good in the end. And if that turns out to be the case, then Simon Kinberg and Matthew Vaughn deserve all the praise in the world for having salvaged the film after the state Trank left it in.
For more great podcasts, news, and reviews, visit our site at midnightsedge.net and follow us on Twitter at midnightsedge. Also check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/midnightsedge.